Alright, so over the summer, me and you did that video, that very, very impromptu video on the VS Universe. And this just kind of seems like the perfect follow-up to that, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So you had said that you had gotten the idea to actually... I had figured I would just see this eventually, but it was your idea to like take the initiative and say we should actually do the whole sneak preview thing that they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Made it even easier when I found out it was coming to the town I live in.
Yeah. Yeah, the drive there was like, what, 10 or 15 minutes?
Mm-hmm.
When it's usually
It's
like...
just across town.
It's usually like over an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like kind of a meant-to-be sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And this was just the normal one. The one in a couple of days is the one with like the double feature. And then shortly after that they're doing the Richard. There was like the whole intro that Smith and Muse did explaining this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so we were trying to figure out on the way back how exactly to go about talking about it without just saying everything. But there's really kind of no way around it. I felt like, interestingly enough, because they're referenced so many times in the movie itself, it felt like the way I go into talking about the last few Marvel movies, where it's like it's just kind of impossible to say anything about it without it technically being a spoiler or whatever, depending on what your definition of that is. So we figured we're just going to talk about it pretty openly, probably potentially all the way through. So you could say this will be like really spoilery or whatever. So
Yeah, but when you see the movie, you'll know why we didn't really have a choice.
yeah. So yeah. So what do you think about the concept in general?
What do you mean?
The whole idea of what Smith was talking about at the beginning before it started, when he was saying how they were basically doing the reboot / sequel thing, and kind of making fun of the tropes that come with that, but also like it kind of is that also.
Yeah, I mean, I think he delivered exactly what he said he was going to.
Yeah, because the usually tends to be an issue that I call a lot of movies out for. Where they want to like Deadpool, for instance, wants to seem to keep calling stuff out, but then they inevitably kind of fall into those tropes themselves, which some people say is the intention, but we were told right up front by Smith himself that was totally the intention with this. So that makes sense. Like there's the constant jokes throughout the movie where around every corner is something that is exactly like what happened in Strike Back, just with a slight difference.
Well, with the movie itself, you can tell he's a fan of comic book movies because he's a master of fan service.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, because fan service can be kind of a very tired thing and a really lazy thing. But like with this movie, it was working, and I don't know if it helped because there were so many people in there. That like it being a group experience probably helped a lot.
And you could tell by what they laughed at. Like everybody that we watched it with was in on the joke.
Yeah.
And knew what they were getting into. It wasn't like when you and I watched Strike Back when we were younger, and that was our introduction, and we didn't know what the fuck to think of it.
And it was like a whole movie of in-jokes, and we never even realized it.
Yeah, and now that we see all the movies, you go back and watch. It's like watching a completely different movie.
Yeah. And that probably helps a lot too in regards to seeing it as like not minding as much that it falls into the same places.
If you've never seen a Jay and Silent Bob movie before, you won't have fun with this.
Yeah. But then again,
it's going to be too ridiculous for you.
But then again, you could have said that about Strike Back also, and we took to it in some weird way that I still can't quite figure out how that happened.
I think it happened by you saying, "Oh, this is a series," and then I think you just took to the other movies in the series, and then that just kind of came along with it.
Yeah. And the way they kind of play on that fact also, where we were talking about how some of the stuff they've gotten into is so out there, like specifically Dogma. When you look at the rest of the series, it's so out there, and that actually gets called out a few times. Like when Jay's talking about their previous adventures, like the joke is how much Dogma stands out when they talk about it.
Yeah,
and how out of place it seems. Which takes us to one of our big cameos with Matt Damon. I mean, that's one of those cases where you can tell that the fan service is working because, on a technical level, that scene has a serious problem. And is that the dishwasher that's really loud, probably?
Yeah.
The whole thing where it's a great moment, especially because you can tell Damon is so into it and what he's saying. But at the same time, it's like you could tell Smith had no idea where to put that scene. So it's just in there, kind of in the middle of a moment when it has nothing to do with what's going on.
It almost felt to me. It kind of felt like when you watch a show on Hulu, and then you get an ad.
Yeah.
And then, like, the movie just picked back up where it went.
And then he even takes a dig at Tom Hiddleston because he's Loki and all that. Not even mentioning that the joke was kind of addressed in Ragnarok also. But yeah, still, it's just one of those cases where because Damon appears to be into the joke so much, it almost doesn't matter that it's like Smith had no idea what to do with this. So he just kind of went with it. And then there was, what do you think about the plot revolving around Jay having a daughter? Not only Jay having a daughter, but Jay having a daughter that's played by Harley, Kevin Smith's daughter.
I mean, it kind of felt like I wonder if that in itself was designed to be a trope.
Yeah, because were you thinking of the same movie I was? Because I remember Kevin Smith saying that was gonna be what the plot was, and my first fear was, isn't that kind of the plot of Dumb and Dumber 2? And we saw how that turned out.
I didn't see Dumb and Dumber 2.
Oh, you lucky douchebag. And that he actually said in the intro also, it's like there was because I've also criticized comedies before where they try to be like super raunchy and all that and go like really broad, and then they like it's almost like they have the nerve to try to suddenly be like emotional.
Are you looking at Judd Apatow when you say this?
Yeah, probably among many others, certainly. But once again, I also don't know how much it helped, how much the intro helped, because you go into a lot of movies, and if something seems really off, you find yourself saying, what were they thinking? But we went into this knowing what Smith was thinking, because he told us.
Yeah.
Which kind of gives you a totally different perspective. So it's gonna, especially when you're kind of expecting that it's eventually going to get to that point, so it does kind of seem like a natural progression. Even with a character like Jay, who recreates his Silence of the Lambs thing, and the opening scene is going to now be getting emotional scenes. But it's like the way, like that first scene when they're in the drive-thru, is kind of like the planting of the seed, and then it's going to pay off when they're at the con. So it's like so there is a progression there, even if it seems impossible that a character like Jay can have emotional scenes. So there is that. Did you have any particular favorite jokes or cameos? Because there's a lot of cameos that you're hoping for that you get, some that you may hope for that don't come, which are few and far between.
Yeah.
And then there's some that are just kind of from out of nowhere.
You thinking of Keith Coogan?
That because it's one thing, and I did a versus on Adventures of Babysitting and Death on the Babysitter's Dead, so I've made my love of Keith Coogan known. But that they went, because I've never been quite sure how well known of a movie Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead is, and there are 3 jokes devoted to it in this movie, which is amazing. Like, and that's the thing too, is it's like if it were a more popular movie, like, or maybe even a more current movie, it would seem like they were way stretching that out and just beating a dead horse. But it's like, because it's that movie in particular, that you just don't hear referenced randomly ever. But it's
the fact that he could have gone big and probably pulled in Christina Applegate or something like that, but went for Keith Coogan.
Yeah, because he even calls it a Keith Coogan classic when he brings it up the first time. And yeah, and it's like, but the thing is I say that movie's not, like, referenced a whole lot, but surely the dishes are done, man, is a line that so many people have to know. And to hear him do another variation on it is gold. Like, that almost felt like a piece of my life had filled in that I didn't realize was missing.
I know, in the theater, like, normally, like, watching movies with you don't say much during the movie. You're very quiet and just kind of observing it. you went out of your way to go, that's Keith Coogan.
Because you didn't quite react, because you reacted so big to Diedrich Bader. Mm-hmm. It's like you audibly reacted to Diedrich Bader, and then when Keith Coogan came out, you were kind of silent. I was like, he doesn't.
It doesn't look like him.
I was gonna say he doesn't know who it is yet, dude. Do you realize who that is?
He doesn't look the same.
Well, I mean, Don't Tell Me the Babysitter's Dead was, what, 1991? It's been a while. Mm-hmm. That movie is 1 year younger than I am, so... yeah, and Adventure Babysitting is 87, so that's even older. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that was really fun. There was a joke that got... And I don't know why it got me so
I'm surprised they
much.
didn't reference that, especially with Hemsworth being in this movie. The Thor connection.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. It was right there.
Maybe that's why he didn't take it. Because that was like, maybe that was too easy.
Yeah, because Kevin Smith said a while back that Hemsworth was going to be in the movie because that's how he got into the Endgame premiere. Mm-hmm. But I wasn't sure exactly what he was doing.
That cameo is even hilarious.
Yeah, it reminded me of Channing Tatum in This Is the End, because the joke starts with like a group of people saying, "Oh my God, I want him." It's like, you know, they're eventually going to run into him, but there's kind of a twist on that to where they run into a version of him that they can't touch.
Yeah, and he requests them not to.
Yeah. So there was as far as individual jokes that weren't necessarily a cameo or anything like that, or a reference, but just a line. And I don't know why this is the joke that just really, like, I'm still laughing about it, and it's at the beginning of the movie. It's when they're talking about How High and their worship of it, and how they show the DVD off. And Brody says, you know, like, you're still renting DVDs? It's all about, like, Netflix and chill now. And then Jay says, you know, Hulu and Hump. And for some reason, my favorite is Redbox and Jerk Off.
The Hulu and Hump joke comes back, too.
Yeah. It's also a nice touch that there's now a Redbox outside of the Quick Stop.
Yeah, because they don't have the video store. It's kind of the substitute.
Yeah, because that's what we were talking about also, was it's so weird the way you can tell they're going around Jeff Anderson. Because it's like, just everybody's here.
Yeah.
And it's like, because there was one, I think the only Clerks cast member that has died was Caitlin. But everybody else, and then it's like, you can just see them. But at the same time, it's like, it doesn't feel as distant now that we know that Jeff Anderson, as far as I know, Jeff Anderson has agreed to Clerks 3 as of like this week. So it's like, knowing that news is out there kind of made it feel like a little less empty, because it's like, we'll get there. But still, with the whole everything coming in, and just even just the opening scene of Dante getting out of his car and still going through the routine. It's like it's that same feeling you felt at the beginning of Clerks 2, where it's funny because Dante is still doing that in the exact same way.
Speaking of Dante, I wish I could go back, because I didn't catch it. The scene where we notice that Justice is the weather person.
Yeah.
And was the last name of his character Hicks?
Yeah, I didn't see it either. But I think it would have to be, because it's always been the joke that O'Halloran's a different character with the same last name.
Yeah.
So it's like, it can't be Grant Hicks, because Grant Hicks is dead.
Yeah.
But maybe it's like a descendant of him, or a sibling of him or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't catch his name. But God, that's what it has to be.
It goes away so fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because what caught my eye was they kept the same first name for Shannon Elizabeth, and I was like, oh, they brought that character back.
Yeah. And then we were also talking about the digs that Smith takes at himself, which obviously he's always done, but he's got so much more material now. There's like the whole, because he's like, he almost plays himself in this movie just as much as he plays Silent Bob. And there's like the moment where like the first thing he talks about when he comes out at the con is his heart attack.
Yeah.
It's like, because that's the way he starts so many things now.
That's even how he started the intro video.
Yeah. It's like he knows himself so well and is willing to play himself that way. Even it's like, it's barely an exaggerated version of himself when he's playing himself.
Yeah. And he takes his digs at Cop Out.
Yeah, and then we've had, I could see immediately where they were going, but I liked the whole, the Molly Shannon scene at the airport when she says you have a weight problem. Remember? Do you remember when that whole thing happened?
Yeah.
And then there's the whole thing about, we even talked about this around the time he started losing the weight, was what is Jay gonna make fun of him for now? And there's a whole scene devoted to he had to change his nicknames, which are also really great, also. And then yeah, so like we were saying, all the returning characters, some of which were expected because this is one of those things that's kind of impossible to avoid advertising because there was so much, and he was doing like a making of vlog like the whole time he was making and posting it to YouTube, which I tried to watch some of, but not enough to know too much. So you can tell stuff like Brody was going to be coming back.
Are you going to be watching? Are you going to go back and watch the whole thing now?
Probably, yeah. He posted that, and he posted like an entire hour and a half making of Tusk with a lot of new stuff. Tusk, which we had just watched before we left because you hadn't seen it before. Well, real quick, do you want to pause and just throw some thoughts on Tusk out there? Because I'm really
Fucked up, man. It's a really fucked up movie.
Oh yes, but gloriously fucked up, isn't it?
Yeah.
Especially since it's something he just came up with on the fly during a podcast. And then we were talking on the way down because I was saying we were trying to figure out who the cameos might be, and I said, well, Justin Long's been in his past few movies. I wonder, surely he'll be in it somewhere. He's like one of the first people we see. So and then that whole thing that is interesting. Also, the whole plot of they can't use their own names because of copyright now, and how that has like. There's jokes around it, but then we get to the point to where it's like it has an emotional payoff at the end, like a genuine emotional payoff.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming, as a wrestling fan, you love the Chris Jericho cameo.
Yeah.
The Chris, what were you gonna say?
No, I was just gonna say,
the Chris Jericho cameo that turns into what I felt like was Kevin Smith living a dream where he always wanted to give the Alec Baldwin monologue from Glengarry Glen Ross. And like this was finally his moment to do that. Chris Jericho channeling Luther and the Warriors.
yeah.
So yeah, that's the stuff we were talking about, how it's easy to appreciate the cameos we know because of the entire series and the faces we haven't seen for a while, and then the faces that just randomly show up. Like Jericho would be one of those.
Dan Fogler.
Yeah, people just have no previous connection to the Views universe.
Craig Robinson.
Yeah, he was in Zack and Miri. That's about as close as he got.
Okay.
So yeah, I do. I mean, it is kind of a predictable criticism to have, and I'm sure a lot of people will have it. Especially since I have this criticism about a lot of movies that have similar plots. I don't think the magic is quite there once they're like on the road with the girls, where it's like because you think like when you think of Strike Back and the two of them just going from like problem to problem or whatever, and now they've got 4 other people with them, it kind of feels like it's going to be a bit of a drag. But they find their way around that pretty much.
Well, they had the same issue in Strike Back.
Yeah, that had a whole other thing up its sleeve. But and this does too, where the ending kind of goes like way off the rails.
We kind of jumped the shark a little bit.
Yeah, but in a way you can tell like he wanted to jump the shark, but then it's like I don't know how much of it really works. But we do have the one big scene. It's kind of like the real climax. It's like we have the real climax of this movie, and then like an action thing happens. It's like the action thing doesn't even feel like the real climax because we have...
Well, what's funny is the action thing, he just stops.
Yeah.
We just go on to something else.
Yeah, because I had to, like, when it dissolved, I had to go back and replay the whole scene in my head to see if it had an ending.
No, it didn't. We just kind of end up at the next place. Like, we don't know how they got back. We don't know... He doesn't see Justice again, so we don't even see if, like, him, like, we don't deal with the conflict of him breaking the promise not to tell her.
Yeah.
I mean, we just kind of cut that bullshit.
And then there's the, cause what I was saying
because it would have been very easy to have a scene where, like, she gets mad and then she realizes that he was right. And,
oh, God. And,
no, we just skipped it.
So, yeah, it's probably for the better. That it almost seems like he got in a hurry. But then I think he mentioned something about realizing that he kind of found his ending, what I was telling you at the last minute, with the Affleck scene. Because the Affleck scene wasn't there. initially,
Mm-hmm.
which makes me wonder. Like, I feel like the ending of this movie would have been significantly weaker without that.
Yeah.
Like, because the action scene would have just been the end.
And it kind of makes sense, too, because, you know, Holden McNeil's always brought some kind of reality to what's going on.
Yeah.
Like, he's a very grounded in reality guy.
Even in Strike Back.
Yeah, and he was kind of the... It's a blessing that he came along, because I don't think anybody could have made that scene work like he did.
Yeah, because as far as introducing them to another part of what's going on, they just gave that to Brody.
Yeah.
Brody got to recreate the Holden scene.
Yeah. And it works for Holden, too, because Holden's a character that always evolves.
Yeah, because he, like, moved on from everything.
Yeah. So he was, like, the perfect person to deliver that scene.
And Smith was saying how it was, like, really cathartic for him, like, as a writer, to be able to give, like, Chasing Amy, like, a really small sequel to just kind of give it closure.
Mm-hmm.
Because Chasing Amy itself has such a bittersweet ending.
Yeah.
And it's like, and this one doesn't, like, cop out, to hate to use the phrase now, but...
You even think it's
Yeah.
gonna be. Because
Yeah.
Jay jumps to that conclusion, and then he's like, no.
It's like, did you even see the other movie?
Yeah.
Or read his comic book, rather.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And,
It felt like as happy of an ending as that story was gonna get.
yeah, and it's the whole thing about, like, he said it was a really emotional thing to get Affleck back, because you heard that whole story, didn't you? Where
Parts of it.
Affleck was doing an interview for Triple Frontier, and the interviewer asked him if he was going to be in it, and he said he hadn't been called and his schedule was open.
Mm-hmm.
And Smith hadn't called him because he just didn't think he would get him, or he didn't think he'd want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so he just kind of texted him, and then it just kind of happened. And then he said, and then there was that interview where he said, making this movie felt like he was living the funeral scene of Big Fish, where everybody was there.
It did feel that way a lot.
Yeah.
He even brought back the kid that insulted Morris Day in the Time.
Yeah. Yeah, there's stuff like entirely through the credits.
Yeah.
And then a final post-credit scene, because there's like so many odes to Marvel.
Yeah.
There's a couple of Brody's shirt is now a Stan Lee shirt, just like when Kevin Smith's playing Kevin Smith, his shirt is a George Carlin shirt that looks like Brody's Stan Lee shirt.
Yeah. And there's a very touching thing in the post credits too with Stan Lee,
Yeah.
where like they're trading lines, and it's
I love that the Marvel thing also came through when Brody was talking about like how lazy reboots and sequels are and how shitty they are, and then he called out Marvel, and then Brody showed that like, no, Marvel is exempt from this.
I think he called it a cinematic triumph. I think was the words he used.
Where it's like you can tell that's half Kevin Smith's real feelings and half him calling out like the rabid fan base that says that.
Yeah.
It's like they're both true. It's both a cinematic triumph and not exactly exempt.
It's like he's grounded enough in reality to notice it, but he's also on the side of the rabid fans.
Yeah.
Because he is one.
Yeah. So I would say
As far as there's some other great cameos.
Joe Manganiello is random as hell.
Joe Manganiello.
He's one of the first.
Yeah. Val Kilmer.
Yeah. I'm wondering if that also has to do with like how there was that point in time there where Val Kilmer couldn't speak because of all like the surgeries and stuff. And I wonder if that was in that period where they intentionally gave him a part where he wouldn't have to speak.
I never thought about that. That's a good point.
The Biggs and Vanderbeek joke comes back.
Yeah. Like you and I were talking about that, there's a lot of people that you would think show up that don't. Chris Rock's nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
As much as they build it up and you think it's going to happen, there's no Mark Hamill.
Yeah.
But it feels like it could. Like, it's so
It almost feels like it was written like it was supposed to happen and then something came up or something.
Yeah. Yeah, because they definitely tease it. But it's... I do like the trade-off, though, that there's an army of him now. Because it's visually funny.
Yeah. Yes, and talking about visual gags, there's a really good visual gag in regards to the Clerks reunion.
Yeah. Yeah, there is. There is. I guess we shouldn't outright spoil everything. Leave them a taste of something.
Yeah, we'll have to like 2 things or whatever.
Yeah.
So is that...
I mean, it's... Where would... where would you ultimately put it? Like, rank it wise. Do you think it fits the universe well?
Yeah, I would say so, but it is so close to Strike Back that it's kind of hard to say.
Mm-hmm.
So
those two, like the way it's set up, like those two could almost be like companion pieces.
yeah.
I mean, you're pretty much, and it's they do call out that it feels like you're watching the same movie.
Yeah.
And there's even some similar gags, like all the different. There's multiple modes of transportation and what they encounter with those multiple modes of transportation.
I was getting Carrie Fisher vibes from Fred Armisen a little bit.
Yeah, Fred Armisen's funny in this movie too.
I did think his joke may have been stretched out a little because there wasn't a lot of material there, but it's one of those cases where it's funny because it's Fred Armisen.
Yeah, he's good at that.
Yeah,
he's a master of. It may not be that funny, but the way he delivers it and the fact that it's him is what makes it funny.
yeah.
He's one of the few people left that can pull that off.
Yeah, it's him and his little group. It's him, Hader, and Mulaney. And that's about it.
But what a crew! What a funny crew! Like I wouldn't mind having like an Olive Garden dinner with that group.
All right, so that pretty much that's about what we have to say about Reboot, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean it's for people like us that have seen all the movies and stuff. I mean it's a great fan service film. It was fun. I had a fun time watching it.
Yeah.
Especially it's like a Where's Waldo of references.
Yeah.
You just go through and just look, and I'm sure that when we inevitably watch it again, we're gonna find a whole bunch more we didn't see the first time.
Yeah, it's kind of like watching like an airplane style movie where there's just jokes everywhere, and you don't catch everything.
Yeah, and it helps because most of them are inside jokes.
Yeah.
And the ones that aren't inside jokes, you could totally see becoming an inside joke. Like, I don't know if he has any plans to continue with these movies or not. I know you talked about Clerks 3. Now, because of this movie, it would not shock me to see Keith Coogan pop up in Clerks 3. And I would lose my shit.
I still want him to finish his Canada trilogy, because it was Tusk, Yoga Hosers, and then he's supposed to do Moose Jaws still.
Yeah.
Which I hope he does, because that just sounds so
is
interesting.
Is he going to bring Depp back? As
I would think that'd be the idea. So
there's no Depp in this, by the way.
Yeah, I kind of want... Bully Rose is missing, too.
Who?
But Depp's daughter, that was the other girl.
Oh, yeah. It would have been kind of funny to have, Depp be Guy Lapointe in that movie.
Yeah.
But, maybe have him at the beginning scene. Like where we talked about Will Ferrell could have been.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, since he's so good at tracking people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alright, so I think that's going to about wrap this up, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I would say so.
Alright, so the next video you're going to see is the big one after this. Assuming this goes out in the right order, which I think it should.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll have a couple more after that, so all that to look forward to, and all the October stuff we've talked about. So I think that's it for me, you, and the dishwasher, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Alright, then that's it.